So the DA believes Msimanga will be the man to lead them into power in Gauteng. How will he do it?
Well, Thembekile, fortunately, I'm not going to be forced to answer that question because Msimanga is here, and sitting alongside him is Makosini Nkosi, who is also going to be giving us political commentary throughout our broadcast here as the DA launches its election manifesto. Thembekile, I must just forewarn you very quickly that we're inside a makeshift studio designed, of course, by the DA, and it is searing hot inside here. So we're going to be using our handkerchiefs every once in a while, so don't be surprised along with our viewers. So having cleared that, let me actually get straight into it. Mr. Msimanga, thank you very much for your time. I want to kick off this interview by simply quoting something that was written here by Simon Greenrod, and you'll remember him from the days of the Independent Democrats, who was a former leader there. And he said something that I suspect many South Africans may agree with him on, that South Africans are looking for a change in direction, not just in PR branding, which is something that you have been accused of as the DA. As a main opposition, you are looked to by voters as people who possibly may be the alternative government should you unseat the ANC. What is it that you'll be offering specifically the people of Gauteng? It is the economic hub of the entire country, and in fact, I dare say, the southern tip of Africa.
Well, I think first of all we need to start off at where we are and where we want to go. So where we are right now is that one in three young people, and young people I mean anybody under the age of 35, find themselves unemployed here in Gauteng. We find ourselves now in a situation where the levels of dependency on the social grant system is growing at a rapid rate instead of creating jobs more on a rapid rate. Musi had said something that is very, very much the core of what we're trying to do now, is that there should be a job in every home. So what we want now saying is that the way that government used to look at investing from a government perspective needs to change. That's number one. We now need to make sure that we invest where we want investors to come and invest. So you need to invest in more roads. You need to invest in more infrastructure development in terms of the bulk services that we're going to be providing to our people. And therefore, you are then going to use that to be able to then attract investment. We've seen that in Midvaal. We've seen that happening now in Joburg. We've seen that happening now in Tshwane, where in the last year alone, between the two, Tshwane and Johannesburg, we've been able to attract 12.45 billion rands in just a year and a half. That has happened because we've now went and listened to the industry players and say, where do we falter? Where do we find ourselves lacking? And they say, well, look, invest in the infrastructure, we'll do the rest. That's where government, I think, has been missing it. I think the current government has held the belief that it is their job to create jobs, and it's not. Their job is to create an environment in which the investors can come in and create the jobs, and that's exactly what we're doing, and that's what we're going to be doing very differently.
Ms. Makosini Nkosi, let me bring you in. Is that something that is sellable to the ordinary South African? Can South Africans be convinced by this strategy?
Look, I think what we have in South Africa is a very powerful and dominant ruling party, and you have the DA being the biggest opposition party at around 22%. My fear is that many voters are not seeing the DA as an alternative to the ANC standing on its own. All right? So they may have all... I've gone through the manifesto, it looks good on paper, but I'm saying there's nothing that jumps at me that says the DA is ready to lead a coalition government that can wrest power from the ANC. I think that's where they are lacking. In terms of, implementing their plan so that they can grow the economy and create jobs and create an environment which is conducive for the creation of jobs. That is very convincing, but I do not know if to people who are sitting at home watching this and listening to this, they see the DA as something that, as a party that can remove the ANC. They don't see the DA as capable of doing that on its own. They would expect the DA to work with other political parties. But if you see practically Like, for instance, at Nelson Mandela Bay, that's not a good advert for a coalition government that could be led by the DA. So I think that is something that I find lacking, that I think they need to work hard on.
Mr. Msimanga, speak about attracting voters. This year, it's going to be a very interesting year because lots of young people are going to be out there in force. We are told that there's many of them who are registered already. If the former president is to be believed, Thabo Mbeki, when he was issuing his encouragement support to possible voters or potential voters, he was saying that 17 million young people make up the population of South Africa, and about 8 million of those are already registered. So young people is a youth is a target for you as the DA. My question to you, therefore, is, what is it that is going to attract that vote to you as the leadership of the DA or as a party?
Well, I think what is attracting more young people to us now is that we're not selling the history. We're not selling the legacy of the liberation movement. We're selling practical solutions going forward. We are saying we want to have a job in every home. That's number one. We are saying that we want to address the imbalances of the past, but we cannot address the imbalances of the past by perpetuating what has been happening in the past. Young people are saying, tell us practically what are you going to do. We're talking about changing the spatial planning of apartheid, the legacy that is left by apartheid, and you'll find that it's finding expression in what we are saying here today. In terms of the structural planning, spatial planning, that's number one. How we are also now beginning to ensure that we're preparing the young people for the jobs that are not even ready yet. The jobs that are not even there. Everybody's now talking about the fourth revolution, but we are saying we're already living in it. And what are we doing right now? We now need to introduce those skills immediately now. We need to introduce those opportunities immediately right now. I met with young people from Soweto, as an example, who are saying, we are producers, but nothing is being bought from us, because now there's cheap imports that are coming in. We as the DA are saying there needs to be legislation that is also now ensuring that there is better protection of our markets that are coming from here. And that's what young people are saying.
Mr. Msimanga, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to again bring in Simon Greenrod here, because he's quite critical, and I suppose he makes good points. That is that if you look at the example of your leader, Musa Maimane, he says that he's a decent man, but he's entirely out of his depth. The perception is that he is stage managed by party handlers, media advisors and speechwriters. He does not seem to be his own man. Therefore, how can he be expected to lead a nation when he cannot lead a party?
You know, that's something that is very much unfortunate, and I think it's an assumption that cannot be based on anything. And I challenge whoever to come and say, this is what Musi wants to say, but this is not what he wants to say. This is what is being said on his behalf, or this is what is being told to say. And it's very unfortunate that this is only reserved for the DA. I've never heard anything of that nature being said about the EFF. I've never heard anything of that nature being said about the ANC. Are you saying that the only black people that are capable of leading are those that are leading outside of the DA? And I find that very, very insulting to start off with. I'm saying we have capable leaders, very, very much educated, very, very much entrenched in what is happening in the South African context, and are actually leading the way. And that's what we now need to be focusing on. I cannot focus on people's assumption of what our leaders are and what our leaders are being pushed to do.
Mr.
I disagree.
Talk to me and tell me if this is a correct observation, and is it a fair criticism of the leader of the DA?
No, you know, in my world as a political consultant, we say it's never the voters' fault. If there is a perception out there that the leader of the DA is not fully in charge, that's not our fault as people who are making that observation. It's not the fault of the viewers at home, it's the fault of the DA, that they are not positioning their own leader as someone who is in charge, that they don't coalesce around their leader when time needs to. You see sometimes the leader of the DA being savaged by some other DA leaders on social media, for instance. Something that you don't see the ANC doing. If anything,
The Delio, Helen Zille,
exactly.
how it was handled.
If anything, if you look at the ANC, you see that the ANC would actually, defend close ranks around their leader, even when you don't disagree with their leader. So I'm saying the perception that the leader of the DA is not his own man is there. We can all see. There are signs that show us that. And I'm saying, what you need to do is to make sure that you position him such that we see him as a man who is in charge. I mean, even EFF did say this during the negotiation in 2016. Julius Malema said he feels that it's better if you were to speak to, who's this gentleman, your national chairman, I think it is, James Self. He said he thinks that if he speaks with James Self, he can make progress. Because if he speaks to this one, he feels like he's talking to someone who's being managed. So the perception is there, and it's for the DA to change that perception. Taking offense and taking exception to that doesn't solve the problem.
Makosini Nkosi and Solim Msimanga, thank you very much.